I toured the cheapest homes in Seattle to figure out if you could actually buy something for less than $225,000 to live in. Gas is $7 a gallon, coffee is $7 a cup. I drive an EV, so I'm not using a lot of gas, but I do drink a couple of gallons of coffee a day, and that starts to add up. So, since I'm looking out for you and trying to find ways to save money, I looked at the 26 properties here in Seattle that you can buy today for less than $225,000. Spoiler alert, there is quite a few interesting options in the mix, so stay tuned. So here's the 26 properties on the market today for less than $250,000 in Seattle proper. You can see we've got a pretty good cluster of homes on the south end of Seattle, traditionally the more affordable end of Seattle. We've got quite a few condos here in Boulevard Park, White Center. Most of the homes for under $225,000 are condos, 13, exactly half of the 26 currently listed. There are a couple other ones in the mix though. Here in Boulevard Park, I believe there is a manufactured home, or maybe it's down a little south here in White Center. There it is. There's two manufactured homes for sale in Seattle right now under $225,000. You might be able to live a little closer to the water though. So if we're looking here at Rainier Beach, we've got a nice little cluster right on the water. Let's see what these homes look like. Spoiler alert, they are not homes. They are slips. So I love this picture. It is not even pointing at the boat. It's pointing at an empty slip. It's just pointing at water at this point. This slip is a condominium, so you can actually own your spot at it instead of paying rent. You do still pay some sort of HOA or condo dues on top of your ownership though. $95,000 for a patch of water, maybe if you're a big boater, but that's not what we're looking for. So we're going to zoom out here and go a little farther north and see what we've got. There's a pretty good cluster in Central District, Capitol Hill, downtown, as well as a big cluster around Lake Union. Lake Union is a gorgeous spot just north of Amazon's campus in South Lake Union, just north of downtown, kind of sandwiched between South Lake Union and some pretty amazing neighborhoods like U District, Wallingford, Ballard, if you go up the cut. It is the connection point between the sound out here and Lake Washington. You can see this cut runs all the way through the Ballard Locks, which actually balances out the levels of the water into Lake Washington. So you can actually take your fancy super yacht, Mark, looking at you, Mark Zuckerberg, take your fancy super yacht all the way from the sound into Lake Washington to your fancy super house. These homes are a little less than super yachts here on the water. We have quite a few floating homes. Houseboats and floating homes are slightly different. We'll get more into that later in the video, but there's actually 5 options for houseboats on the market right now, as well as 5 options for just empty patches of water, boat slips like we saw down in Rainier Beach. There's one property type we haven't talked about yet. It is in the center of downtown Seattle, potentially one of the best locations here of any of the properties. It is also just $55,000, already quite exciting. It looks great. Look at this hallway. I have a feeling though that for $55,000 we are not getting this kitchen. If we scroll through, we're at photo 6 is of the pool. Photo 7, we finally see what we're actually buying. This is a listing for a parking spot here in Seattle. Parking spot 160, which, to add insult to injury, I'm looking at parking spot 160 and it actually looks like a pretty terrible parking spot right up against that yellow cone in the door. So you can really dent your door as you're trying to get in and out of your parking spot. That's the last of the 26 listings here in Seattle. To take a look at what we can actually buy though, we're going to tour 2 of these. Not the parking spot, sorry you guys. We're going to tour a floating home here on Lake Union on Westlake Ave. This super cute little blue boy. Yes. And we're going to tour a condo in Capitol Hill, very close to Harborview and very close to a lot of other amazing restaurants and bars and nightlife. This is a studio condo in a really nice building in Capitol Hill. We're going to compare these options and see what you can actually buy for $225K or less here in Seattle and actually run the numbers. What are you going to pay monthly? Is that actually more affordable than rent? Stay tuned. So is a $250,000 home in Seattle actually affordable, or is it just a bait and switch? For that, it really depends on the type of what you actually own with these inexpensive Seattle homes is the real issue. With a condo, it's relatively straightforward. You own an undivided percentage of the actual building as well as the land underneath it. You own 100% of the interior airspace of your unit. We're talking, interior finishes, everything inside, not counting those exterior walls. And usually you own outright certain private amenities like your parking spot, even though the HOA is tasked with maintaining that spot. It gets a little different with floating homes, which is one class of on-water residence in Seattle, and houseboats, which is another. Houseboats look a little bit more similar to condos. Most of them have permanent utility hookups. Most of them are connected to water and sewer. Most of them are part of co-ops, a similar structure to condos, where the cooperative actually owns both the dock, the land leading up to the dock, as well as the kind of mud flats underneath. But those are the homes that you see for 800,000, a million, 2 million, even, $4 or $5 million on Lake Union. What about the $150,000, the $125,000 houseboats that we're looking at? Those are a little different. Houseboats are not on owned land. They are private property. You have the right to live there because your slip is a liveaboard slip, and you typically have a city placard since there are only a certain number of houseboats or floating homes even allowed in the city of Seattle. It's capped. You have a placard that gives you the right to live there in the floating home, just like a taxi placard in New York City gives you the right to run a taxi. But you're a tenant. You're leasing that slip from your landlord. And although there are a lot of tenant protections that prevent your landlord from removing you from your floating home, at the end of the day, you don't own the dirt underneath, you just own the boat. And because the boat is personal property, you'll see that the lending options available to you aren't as good.
It's taking a long time. And there goes the garage door. It keeps going up, 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 up. Back, back, back. Now.
330 square feet with a full room and tub, as well as breakfast bar and built-in laundry. Big living, sleeping area, and look at all this storage. You can fit almost anything in there. Through here, we've got plenty of space for queen or king bed. And then, of course, lots of light, bright light through the courtyard. This is a first floor unit with no stairs needed for access. Full kitchen, including dishwasher and stainless steel appliances. There's a lot of amenities here, despite a lower HOA fee. We've got a full exercise room. In addition to your in-unit storage, there's a full separate storage room in the building. Your storage unit is A2. Look at all this space. You could fit pretty much anything in here. Oh, I should have saw that one coming. Now we're looking at a listing for a slip and a houseboat, 125K with, check these views out. Here we are. Let's take a look. Inside, you've got a living, kitchen, dining with probably the cutest little wood stove that I've ever seen in my entire life. Look at this thing. It is teensy tiny. And then up through here, you've got a pretty nice little bathroom. I will say this marina has shore bathrooms as well with key cards that you can use. So if you're not into the head, you can take a short walk to shore. And then this is where it's at. You've got the views, you've got the vibes, but what's the actual cost of ownership to purchase something like this $125,000 floating home? Let's take a look at the numbers. Let's talk about the condo first. You can do 3% down or 5% down on a condominium if you're an owner-occupied buyer, you're moving into the unit. At 5% down, this is about $11,250 down payment to get this unit. The mortgage on that would be about $1,350 at our 6.5% current interest rate and a 30-year mortgage. The HOA does cover water, sewer, garbage, and a couple other expenses at $436. Electricity, I put $80 a month. Realistically, this unit is small and built in the 90s, so chances are it would be a heck of a lot less than that. But just in case I went high on the electricity, property taxes and homeowners insurance round us out to a payment of about $2,100 a month for the condo. Compare that to, on the far right side here, our rental property studio rate in Seattle. Usually that's around $1,600 to $1,700. Utilities oftentimes are about $150 on top of that. Renter's insurance, another $20 or $25. All in, that will come out to about $1,790, $1,800 a month. So about $300 a month cheaper than the condominium. That said, the Seattle market is slowing down and we're able to negotiate quite a bit more as buyers. One tool that we're using a lot is a 2-1 buy down. What that means is that we are buying down the interest rate by 2% in the first year, 1% in the second year to make the payment quite a bit more affordable. You can see option B in the light blue here. We're looking at the condo with a 2-1 buy down. That brings the interest rate and the payment way down to $1,860 a month in the first year. It does creep up a little bit in year 2 and then again in year 3, but it is much closer to the cost of a rental property compared to condos without the buy down. And you might be saying, well, the rental is still cheaper. Not necessarily, because one thing that we don't capture in this spreadsheet is the savings that you get by paying down your mortgage, the equity that you're building, even without appreciation, just by paying down your loan balance. What you don't see here is that in year 1, you're paying down your loan balance by about $3,000, so about $300, a little bit less a month that you're paying down, making it as affordable as the rental property without the buy down and quite a bit cheaper than the rental property with the buy down. That amount that you're paying down the loan does increase over time too. The way loans work, you pay more interest in the front end and you pay more principal in the back end. So by year 5 or year 10, you're paying closer to $5,000 a month down. By year 20, you're paying, $10,000 or more a month down. Primarily the vast majority of your payment starts going towards principal. So all in, the condo is actually comparable to a rental property. It will save you more money in the long term, even without appreciation, because you're paying down that mortgage by $3,000 or up to $10,000 a year. But it is a little bit more expensive from a payment standpoint because that equity is stuff that you still need to pay into your mortgage, and it's going to be a little higher than a rental payment at today's rates, assuming that you're not able to refinance lower than 6.5% in the future. But what about the floating home? The floating home we looked at was almost half the price of the condo at $125,000. There's a couple of downsides to floating homes. The property is personal property, so you're not able to get the same interest rate and terms. Typically, we're 20% or more down. To keep things same. I did 5% down here to make it easy, but just know that that's really not an option for floating homes, unfortunately, or houseboats, I should say. The interest rate that we're typically seeing for houseboats is 8.5%. The term is typically a lot shorter. We're looking at 5, 7, 10-year terms. To keep comparing apples to apples, though, I did a 30-year term just to compare it to the condo. The mortgage is only $900 a month, even with that higher interest rate because of the lower purchase price. But the mortgage, including utilities, you still need to pay even though you own the vessel. That is a whopping $1,350 a month. The estimated vessel insurance is another $100. One upside is that there is no property taxes on a houseboat because there is no property. You just own the boat and are renting the slip. So that you don't need to pay for, at least. The total monthly payment, interestingly enough, on the houseboat, even at $125,000 purchase price, is actually higher because of the additional costs from the mortgage at $2,360 a month. So this just goes to show that although the property purchase price is important and it'll definitely impact your down payment, one of the most important things when you're buying a house is what are the additional expenses? What's the HOA fees? What's the mortgage? What's the utility cost? And these things do add up. So what's the final verdict? Should you rent? Should you get a floating home? Should you get a condo? Renting can be a really great option, particularly if you're thinking about moving in the next 1 to 3 years. Moving is expensive, between paying for movers and potentially selling your home and paying excise tax and paying real estate agents like me to sell it. That can be a great option to buy flexibility into your life. But if you're staying put for 4, 5, or more years, it could be worth looking at a condo. It is pretty comparable on a monthly basis once you factor in the loan paydown, the monthly payments that are going towards principal on the loan, and that's assuming 0% appreciation. Historically, Seattle has had 5.5% appreciation year over year, which means that you will be saving quite a bit of money or making quite a bit of money by buying a property. But even assuming 0% appreciation, we're actually about even with the rental property once we factor in the loan paydown. Floating homes are a little bit different. They are less money on the front end, or I should say houseboats on the front end are less money, but you end up paying for it with higher mortgage fees, with higher cost of ownership. So the actual monthly outlay is quite a bit higher than both a condo and a rental property. But you're living on the water. If that's worth it to you to pay a little bit more and to have a little bit less loan paydown and have a little bit less appreciation because it's personal property, not real property, that could be an amazing option. Real estate isn't one size fits all, though. I've been a real estate agent and investor for 13 years. I've lived in tiny homes on wheels. I've lived in studio apartments. I've lived in big houses. I've built houses. And I can say that everyone's situation is completely different. The best option for you might be a condo, a rental, or a houseboat, or it might be none of these options. So if you want to talk more about real estate, if you want to talk more about affordable housing in Seattle, and if you want to talk more about how to buy your first home, please reach out to me, Michael Haas, and the rest of the HouseHack Seattle team. We would love to talk to you about these 3 options or 4th, 5th, and 6th options that weren't shown. My info is down there in the video description. Just click to shoot me a text or book a call. Peace.